This is Coach Jason Ballard, and I'm a business wingman. Over the years, I've learned a lot from working in our family construction business, serving as a senior officer in the United States Air Force, and running 12 different organizations around the world. Many people helped me get to where I am today, and it's my mission in life to serve as a personal wingman to others. That's what this podcast is all about, providing knowledge, tools, resources, and mentorship to help people soar to their highest altitude. And welcome back to the Soar Higher podcast. This is your host, Coach Jason Ballard, and it's such a privilege to be with you today. Today, we got an excellent show in store for you, and I'm so excited to introduce our guest here. But today, we're going to be talking about how to build a successful business through faith-based culture and organizational improvement. So if you're out there and you're a leader in business and your company is struggling with growth, if your company is struggling with rapid change, if you're struggling with the increasing consumer demands being placed upon your organization, your people, and being able to keep up with those kind of things, we have a real treat for you today. We have an expert that can help you overcome those types of things. Today, we have the privilege of having Alex Sezer on the show. Let me tell you a little bit about Alex. This young man is a very impressive young man. One, he's the CEO of Sezer Ventures, which is an organizational improvement and cultural transformation. Goes into companies and helps them transform into whatever they need to transform into so they can achieve their desired level of success. But prior to that, what an amazing resume. He is a leader of leaders. He was the team captain of the Texas A&M football team. Started as a freshman on defense against Mike Evans and Johnny Manziel. What a tough thing to do there, and was successful. He runs two multi-million-dollar real estate companies, and now he is following his passion to help others succeed by creating profitable, purpose-driven organizations based on Christian values. So it's my privilege to introduce to you Alex Sezer. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate the introduction, and I'll try to do it justice during this show. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's such an honor to have you. You are just one of those kind of special people in life that you meet on occasion that just is just a great leader, humble, and just has a special way of just carrying yourself that just embodies success. It just embodies good things. And you can just, you spend 5 minutes with Alex and you can, just kind of feel that with his presence. So we're honored to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
All right. First and foremost, I've got to ask this question. As a football guy myself, what was it like to play in the SEC on Texas A&M? Give us a little bit of history there, a little bit of backstory.
Absolutely. So my first year at Texas A&M was actually our second year in the SEC. And as far as what it was like, so A&M is unlike any other place. I know everyone has school pride, but when people come in from the outside and you play in that stadium, it is different. When you see 105,000 people swaying and the stadium kind of starts to move, like it is a different environment to play at Texas A&M. And I'll just say this about every other school in the SEC. There are no days off. I mean, you look at that schedule and, in high school, you look at the schedule and okay, we're going to beat this team. This is going to be a hard game. We're going to beat this team. You look at that schedule in the SEC, you better bring your A game every single week. Especially at the position I played. I mean, the team could be average and have a star receiver. So literally there were no off days. So it was every single week, week in, week out, preparing like a champion, getting ready to play. And it was fun. I mean, traveling on the road to play at places like Alabama and LSU at night. Death Valley is not a place
Oh,
you want to
wow.
be wearing a different color than purple and gold. So it's just a lot of different experiences that were just irreplaceable. So it was a fun
Yeah.
time for me. The teammates, the people I met. I mean, I'm not the big name guy, but I played with some ballers, the likes of Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans and Myles Garrett and a lot of first round offensive tackles. So we had some guys who could play football.
Absolutely. Well, you were there during some really big years for Texas A&M. Texas A&M, from an SEC standpoint, they every team goes through ups and downs. I'm a Florida State guy myself, and we've been in a lull for a while. Looks like we're starting to come back up again. Thank God. Yeah. I'm tired of taking punishment from my family over that. But Texas A&M was kind of in a little bit of a lull there, and then Johnny Manziel showed up, started playing. What was it like, just real quick? What was it like playing with Johnny Manziel and that whole group? That was a very special group.
Yeah, fortunately and unfortunately for me, I had to practice against him every day. So it was a learning curve when I first came in, but eventually it made me a much better player playing against the likes of guys like Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans and Christian Kirk and a bunch of guys that are still playing in the NFL right now and playing well. So it was a joy, it was a challenge, and every single day was different. So it was certainly fun to be able to experience that, and I guess I'll be able to tell my kids and grandkids about it one day.
Well, I'd say, I think less than, if I got my statistics right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's right at 2% or less of the athletes that come out of high school actually make it into the ranks of the collegiate level. And so the fact that you made it, you started as a freshman and you had to go up against, an elite offense at that time. They were top notch. They were knocking off Alabama. They were knocking off the big guns in the SEC and other teams as well. So you definitely had to, be on your A game to succeed at that level. So, all right, last question about football, and we'll transition into some other things. So you talked about the uniqueness of Texas A&M. One of the things about that university and that stadium, that football program, is something called the 12th man.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about that. What was that experience?
Yeah, so it started with, for the people who are not familiar with it, we have the 12th man refers to the fans of the football team, the students, the parents, anyone who supports Texas A&M. It started with E. King Gill was the name of the guy. It was a football game, and essentially A&M was down on players. And I believe we only had 11 guys. So you have 11 guys on the field at one time. So the coach called someone from the stands to stand on the sideline just in case one of the players got hurt. So the 12th man stood there the whole time. I don't believe he actually got to get in the game. But now we have the 12th man student section, which is not allowed to sit down. So their stance is representative of what that player did or what that essentially fan did, just showing the support, saying, hey, we're here with you and we're ready to go if need be. But they stand the whole game. They cheer like crazy the whole game. So we love the 12th man, and they come out and support every single week. Obviously, we've had our ups and our downs, and they are there. Rain, sleet, snow, sunshine, it doesn't matter. 12th man's going to come out and show up strong no matter who we're playing. So
that is awesome.
We certainly appreciated that.
That's a really cool story. There are times as a Florida State guy, I wish they'd adopt a 12th man. I can sneak in and stand on the sidelines and because even as an older guy, man, I can still get out there and catch a ball, right? I can do better than some of the people they had out there on the field, right? I mean, they were just tanking games left and right. I'm like, put me in. I mean, somebody can do something. Oh, man, that's really cool, man. And I'm so glad you got to experience that, because that is special. Not many people get to enjoy that. And so, and I bet you learned a lot from those days, a lot teamwork and leadership because you were the team captain. I mean, how did you get voted to be team captain?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about me being a team captain is that I wasn't the best player on the team. So normally it would be normal if, you vote Johnny Manziel or whoever to be team
Yeah,
captain based on their level of talent. I think that my teammates saw something in me outside of just, oh, this guy is good at football. I think they saw a leader. I think they saw a guy that they could trust. I think they saw a guy who showed up to work every single day on time, ready to work, and a guy who gave his best effort in every single thing that we did, whether it was in the classroom, on the field, or just how I treated people in general. I think they saw someone that they could look up to and trust, and they voted me team captain. It was actually voted on by the teammates. So that was an
wow,
honor for me to be able to represent them. And I think it speaks to their maturity as well, to not automatically go, okay, the best player on the team needs to be the captain.
right,
They saw how I led on and off the field and honored that. So I appreciate their maturity in voting me team captain. So
yeah, that's incredible. An honor, because it's not the coaches aren't picking their favorites or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
that's the team rallying together around you. So, it, and I see that sometimes where I see people that play sports in their youth. Um, a lot of those folks, they just have innate kind of leadership qualities about them, right? They're just not that
absolutely.
they're the bossiest or they're the ones willing to fall on a sword and do something crazy, but they just have like they're just grounded, they're just trusted, and I certainly see a lot of that in you and your kind of Christian principles that you seem to live by. So
Thank you. Yeah,
that's really cool.
it's very hard to go through those ranks and not develop some level of discipline that is at least above average.
Right.
If you look at the schedule of, I can speak for an SEC football player and what's demanded and the level at which you have to perform on the field, and then factor in workouts at 5 a.m., study hall. I was in the engineering college, so that wasn't easy in itself either. So all of
Mm.
those things combined, I had no choice but to be disciplined. If I wasn't disciplined, there was no way I have the same level of success, no matter how talented. So you had to bring a certain level of discipline, and the athletes that figure out how to translate that from the field to the boardroom, those are the guys you see have long careers that outside of sports. So
Yeah. All right. Well, so obviously did some wonderful things that a lot of people don't get to do playing college football at Texas A&M. So you graduate, didn't go into the NFL, you got out into the real world and started working. So kind of catch us up to speed on, Texas A&M days to where we are today. What was that
yeah,
journey for you?
absolutely. So got an engineering degree. Sometimes they call us pretengineers because I'm technically not an engineer on paper. So I was in engineering college, but it's an engineering degree that's blended with business. I knew I didn't want to
Okay.
sit behind a desk and operate on a machine. So it was kind of a cross between the engineering school and the business school, but we're in the engineering school. I took a lot of technical classes, but I know enough about everything to have a conversation. And I can't build your house or build your bridge or anything like that. So, but I did that, and I left college, went to work for an energy consulting firm. I was in the technology branch of the company, so we did a lot of different things. Worked for a lot of different private equity groups. The group that I was staff on, so as a consultant on this project, it was a private equity group that was buying power plants. So I was in the Northeast, New York, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maine. So I was traveling. I lived in Houston. So I'd fly out and essentially take all the technology that was existing with the old ownership, kind of like if you're buying a house in real estate, you have a property management company. I would convert everything over to the new systems, SCADA systems, data, everything to the new ownership so that they could take over the operations of the power plant. So it was actually one time in my career, I actually got a call in the middle of the night saying, hey, we need you to Get on your computer right now. And I still don't know the severity of the situation. We got it solved, but I'll just tell you this. That power plant supplied a fourth of the power to New York. So I don't know if I
Wow.
saved New York from going lights out or anything, but it was situations like that. Those are the type of projects I was working on. I think the deal volume on that, just on what I worked on in my a year at that company, was $2 billion in power plant purchases and conversions. So that was cool. A year into my career, I really didn't have any plans on leaving that company. I received a call. I was in Rhode Island, a power plant. And this call was from a guy who I'd met fishing in his backyard. So I'm fishing in this guy's backyard with a couple of teammates. I was still in college. And I see this guy, and it's just this beautiful home on the lake. He walks out of these double doors in the back. And I'm looking at the house. And when he walks out, I'm thinking, oh, this all makes sense. Beautiful home. How'd he buy it? He walks out, he's about 7 feet tall. And I thought that he was like a retired NBA player or something. So I paddled over, and I was actually the only person who went up to talk to him that night, introduced myself. We had a conversation. I just finished reading the book by Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We had a conversation about that. Turns out this guy was a real estate mogul, and he gave me his phone number and told me if I ever need anything to reach out. And I reached out to him 2 weeks later. That conversation, that simple thank you for allowing me to come fish in your backyard, turned into a friendship, which turned into a mentorship. He called me, which eventually turned into a partnership. I moved back to Bryan College Station to take over his company, became the president of his company, started another company that I was a president of as well. So one was a management company, his company, and the other was acquisition. So he helped me start in my real estate career, buying property. I did that for almost 5 years, looked up 3 years later, and we had purchased 340 units together. So that was going well.
Wow.
Once again, had no plans on leaving. I just purchased a new RV park actually with him. And it was a normal Saturday, and I just felt the unction that it was time for me to do something else. So I called my dad, and I'm like, hey, man, I don't know how he's going to take this. I just bought this park. I'm supposed to manage the park. I feel like it's time for me to move on. And my dad, his response was the confirmation I needed. He says, oh, yeah, I knew that. And I'm thinking, hold on. What do you mean you knew that? And he told me this. He said, I had a dream and you were packing up your office. So I responded. I said, hey, when are you going to tell me this information? And he told me this, son, it's not my job to tell you. It's my job to confirm it. So I knew it was clear.
Wow.
I had already started working on some of the stuff I'm doing now. And I had been doing projects for people on the side, some consulting work and things like that. Started writing some books and things about organizational culture. And I thought it would be a really hard conversation. So I go to my partner. I'm like, hey, he's as retired as he's ever been now. He's 30 plus years my senior. I'm thinking this is bad. And I go to him. I said, hey, we need to talk. And he says, well, what do we need to talk about? We were leaving the bank together. I said, no, we need to talk in your office. It's serious. He said, Alex, just tell me what we need to talk about. Anyways, 10-minute drive to the office. We had that short conversation. He says, I knew it. He says, I knew I couldn't keep you forever. And even with him talking about me as potentially buying him out and things like that, I just knew it was something else I had to do. And that may actually still happen. But I knew in this moment, God was calling me to something different. Came home. In that process, started to transition things back to him, and everything just became so clear. I had a bunch of different things on my whiteboard at home and about biblical entrepreneurship. And I was praying over it, kind of like, God, what do you want me to do? Am I taking another job? I'm going to private equity. Like, what's happening here? And just kind of got the message that the first 7 things on your board are how organizational culture is created. I look up at the board, and this is what it said, amongst the other 30 some odd things on the board: vision, purpose, mission, core values, brand, team building, and authenticity. It was just words, nothing, no curriculum behind it, just words. So I took that and ran with it and brought in my team captain experience and my president experience and all the stuff that I've been doing, and kind of started to really just dive into the word and, okay, God, teach me about vision and how should that happen? And I already learned some of these things being a young president, having to do it myself. And for me, the Bible had just always been my source. That's what I relied on. I'm thinking, man, if this can kind of determine eternity, it ought to be able to help me write a vision statement, right? And I just, found some things in there, and I was like, okay, cool, I can use this, and begin to teach that to staff. And I had Christians on my team, I had non-Christians on my team, I had people who maybe didn't believe in a God on my team, but all of them got the information because it wasn't just information. I showed them how it applied to them, how it applied to our organization. And that turned into what we have now, the Culture Catalyst program and all of the other things that I'm doing. But that's how it started.
Wow. Amazing. So one, clearly God was at work there. There were too many dynamics going on
Absolutely.
there when you might not have recognized it as clearly as it was happening around you. Very seldom do we like, oh yeah, there's Jesus. Hey, there's Mary and Joseph. There's everybody. Hey,
Alex, this is the Lord.
Right. Like you just don't like, it just doesn't happen like that. Right.
Absolutely
but there's these little signs, these little dots that get connected along the way. And, I've got some similar stories where things were working in my life in a similar manner. And clearly God was taking you somewhere. He had plans for you.
Absolutely.
And is taking you to where you are today. So how did you get, of all the things you can do, cause you're a pretty dynamic guy, right? I mean, football player, I could see you going into sports, coaching, real estate business, you got that engineering degree. I mean, there's a lot of different lanes you could have gone down. Why did you go down this kind of coaching, training, development lane of culture and organizational, improvement and structure and all of those things? Like, how did you just get gravitated? How did the GPS pull you down that lane?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a combination of things. One, I just believe that it was, God led me here because I really didn't have a clear go do this. It was just like, hey, go. It wasn't a, hey, I'm calling you here. It was just like, hey, it's time for you to move on. Well, that in combination with the impact that I saw in my own team when we were at our best, when I'm referring to organizational culture, when our culture was at its best, when our people were at their happiest, when they were at their most challenged, their most fulfilled, and we were cohesive as an organizational culture, as a team of people, versus maybe when I first took over and there was some dysfunction and some maybe jealousy or pettiness or whatever we had going on that was a deterrent. The output of those things, not just when it comes to happiness in the workplace, but ROI implications of that were significant. So I wanted to be in the area where I could make the most impact. And for me, I'm kind of my business is 3 different arms, so to speak. So speaking at schools, obviously that's capturing the people while they're early and young, our youth, as well as their teachers. That's a huge implication to that impact. Organizational culture in the corporate world, for me, that was the foundation of success in business. And then obviously spiritually, there is no comparison for me to that. It's an eternal implication for me in my belief. So that was why I was gravitated towards organizational culture, just because of the long-term impact it has not only on the organization and its financials, but the people in the organization.
That's right. So you're very, very people centric,
Absolutely.
and a lot of people talk about things in business today, and they talk about, money, mergers, acquisitions. They talk about,
I've been there,
products and services and marketing and market competition. And they, there's all kind of things to talk about. There's all challenges, spread throughout that, talent acquisition, talent retention. There's all these kind of, we'll call them hot button topics that people gravitate around. But at the end of the day, like, what's the root? Right. Yeah. Those are things that surround the company. They all have their individual, wants, needs, challenges, issues, problems, etc. But at the center of all that, like, what's the nucleus? What's at the root of that? And that's really that cultural component that you're describing here. So talk to us a little bit about some of the trends you're seeing. You're out there in the
Yep.
corporate world working with lots of different people in a lot of different ways. What are some of the trends you're seeing? Kind of where are we, strategically looking at the landscape of our economy and the business sector? What are some of the most common things you're seeing? What are some of the most challenges, your areas that you're seeing and working with people
Yeah,
on?
absolutely. So one big thing I see playing organizations right now is I think there is a communication variance between generations. And it's
Mm,
almost created this gap essentially of, if you look at our organizations and the way that they're made up, you have baby boomers that are almost, a lot of them are still actually working, but at the top of organizations and are so used to doing something a certain way. And then you have millennials and Gen Z. It's just a rapid, I'm a millennial. I think Gen Z is different than I am, and I'm kind of an old soul. But you see this different style of communication, different expectations about work and what work means.
hmm.
And then also you have this lacking of empathy from both sides potentially. And I
Really?
tend to
Okay.
favor more of the baby boomer. I'm kind of those put up or shut up type of guys. But I think if you really look at the heart of some of the things that are coming from younger generations that I'm a part of and beneath me, is they want meaning in their work. So I think the days of the industrial revolution, be the cog in the wheel, so to speak, perform the task, even with automation and things that are coming along, those types of jobs, I don't see people wanting as much anymore.
Yeah.
And if they do take those jobs, what I have to do as a consultant is to make sure that they understand how what they do plays into the overall vision and mission of the company. And I think sometimes that's where the disconnect is because the leader who's been there, who founded the company potentially knows exactly what needs to get done to produce that intended outcome. Hey, we have to do X, Y, Z, and that's going to take us here. Millennials come in, Gen Z comes in, and they're like, why exactly am I filing this paper again? Is there nothing else more meaningful for me to do? Insert baby boomer, and he goes, that is very meaningful. Do it. But there's not a lot of us painting that picture about, hey, if this does not get done, this is how this plays into that. Same thing in my real estate business. There was kind of early on, some of the people that were entry level felt like senior level didn't understand them. What I had to do was paint the picture and show my receptionist how she was the face of the company. If you don't greet that person with a smile before they ever see the property, now you've just made the property manager's job harder when he goes out to the property, if they make it there. If the property manager doesn't do his job, now that flows into the owner's pocket because they're not gaining applications and people moving into the property. If maintenance doesn't do their job, now we have retention issues to where we have so many people move out every single year after their first term because we can't fix anything and we don't fix it fast enough. So getting everyone in the organization to see, hey, what you are doing is meaningful. What you are doing is important. This task plays into the overall vision of the company. So I don't know if you've probably heard the analogy before. It's the difference between laying bricks and building cathedrals. So the story goes that there's three guys and one guy, they're all basically doing the same task. Guy walks up and he says, hey man, what are you doing? He says, what does it look like? I'm laying bricks. The second guy, he goes, hey, what are you doing? What does it look like? I'm building a wall. He asks the third guy, what are you doing? He says, what does it look like? I'm building a grand cathedral for God. Which one of those people you think shows up the most motivated to work? It's the person that sees how their individual task plays into the overall vision and mission of the company. So that's one thing I see, is that there's a communication barrier between generations that's being solved, but also causing issues. The second thing that plays into that, 47 million Americans quit their job in 2021. Or was it 2020? I think it might have been 2020, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So one of those years, we have 47 million people resign. They weren't fired. They didn't get laid off. Like they literally voluntarily quit. we have to ask ourselves why. And when you look at what we're seeing and when we look at the data and what's kind of being fed back to us, it's culture issues. So those are just two things that I'm seeing right now that I'm trying to help be a bridge builder and bring generations together and help us understand each other, because a lot of the times we're saying the same thing in different ways. So making sure that we're both on the same page, clearly communicating, and we have a level of understanding that both parties can be happy and we can accomplish what we're setting out to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And I agree with everything you're saying. I see similar things, in my coaching practice as well. But if you really think about it on the grand scheme, a lot of COVID, while traumatic and people were sick and people died and people, were significantly impacted by this pandemic.
Absolutely.
The cause and effect around it, COVID kind of accelerated that, right? Like we were moving down. There was like this tidal wave. I kind of like, there was a movie, I can't even remember when that movie came out. It's called The Perfect Storm, with George Clooney was a fisherman, and they were out off of Nova Scotia, and these three storms came out of nowhere and collided, and his team, his boat full of fishermen all got hit by this big storm, and they ultimately, died in this storm. And I think like COVID was like almost like a perfect storm of some things going on, right? You've got baby boomers starting to exit, moving up in the world, kind of in their last job or two, and then starting to retire, kind of hanging on, trying to, enjoy the fruits of our positive, strong economy at the time.
Right.
And then you've got millennials kind of, really proliferating the workforce. And that too. Figuring out what they want to be when they grow up. And so they're in their 20s, at this point, 20s and early 30s. And then you got the Gen Zers coming in, and they're a little bit different than the millennials, as you described. And then you've got, kind of the old corporate ways of doing things where everybody had to commute and drive and, just some of the old inefficient ways of doing things. Right. There's just a lot of things going on, and COVID accelerated what I think needed to happen, which is change the dynamic of the conversations about the work, the workforce, the economy, how we work. And I think a lot of the generation, the millennials and Gen Zers saw their parents working, driving, having to drop them off at daycare at 6 a.m. to make it to work because they had to commute an hour, and then they get laid off and fired with no, notice sometimes. And you're kind of at the realm of the organization. Like, if it's going well, hey, great, we love you. Here's a bonus, right? And but if leaders make bad decisions that drives the company downward, then it's the workers that pay the price, right? And I think the millennials and the Gen Zers are like, who in the heck wants to do that? Why should I sacrifice so much for putting myself at risk next week of some goofball I don't even know in the company that makes a bad decision? And now I'm out of a job, and I'm like, for what? Right?
Yeah.
And so
I think it definitely brought out a different perspective and potentially new opportunities that maybe people just didn't have time enough to slow down and recognize.
Yep.
Because everything was just moving, get up, go to work, take a shower, go to bed, get up, go to work, take a shower, go to bed. And then it was just like, hey, go home and stay home. And now it's like, ooh, I have time. I wonder what's out there. And people start to tap into different things. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to freelance this for a little bit. And they're like, okay, 6 months, maybe I can get this to a level where I'm comfortable and it replaces my income. And they do that for a year, and they're like, okay, maybe I can walk away. So I think people are starting to realize that there are other options. Absolutely. I'll tell you this, it made my organization much more efficient. We went
Yep.
from 25 people in-house, a couple hundred vendors, a couple thousand residents, to we went from 25 people that weren't overworked or stressed out, but challenged, 25
Yep.
challenged people
Busy.
with
Yeah.
the workload, to 15 people that are kind of like, we have to be here because someone has to be here when the office is open. But it made us so much more efficient. And
Yeah.
essentially, when people, we didn't have to fire anyone. We paid everyone through COVID to basically work from home and or not work from home. But when people would leave or find different jobs or move or whatever it may be, we literally just didn't have to hire because of the technological efficiencies that were built in due to, hey, you have to figure out a way to lease your property without showing it in person,
Yep.
without signing a lease. And we used to sit down and sign leases with people and welcome and give them a hug. None of that. You can't do that anymore. So essentially, we figured out a way. I kind of had to do it overnight. As quick as the shutdown came, to lease the property, sign the lease, have them move in without ever actually having to see a person in person.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. A lot of, well, I think everybody's, the restaurants had to figure out how to way to get food in people's hands without
yeah,
sitting down in a traditional restaurant setting. Mortgage brokers, title companies, when you do closings, when you do loans, when you do banking,
yeah,
all these different ways you engage changed. And I think a lot of that change is healthy and thinking outside the box and be more efficient. And
yeah,
I think a lot of it is just getting people, especially the managers and leaders, out of their comfort zones of, I don't physically have to watch you work in your cubicle all day to feel like you're producing value. Like if I'm not here in my office, and half the time leaders aren't even like, what? I mean, they're busy and meeting. They're clueless to
yeah.
what's going on half the time anyway, right? Many of them are. And so I think it was just a much needed change. But as you have, evolved your company and now you go into other people's companies, talk to me about like your process. Like you go in,
Yeah.
how do you get started talking about culture and organizational change and things like that? How do you start the conversation, and then how do you work with people? What is your process to start taking them through this,
Absolutely.
transformation?
So I'll give you the overall framework and we can dive into any section that you want to. But essentially, I have to make sure that we all have a collective understanding that is the same, to make sure we're having the same conversation. So for example, even a word like culture, some people have different definitions of what that actually means. So I want to make sure that we have a collective understanding. So at the top of the framework, I have, what is culture? Why does it matter? And how it's created. So why does it matter? Most people know why it matters once they call me, at least. But literally, it feeds into the results that we experience. The way in which I define it goes into how I'm going to help you produce that intended outcome. So what is culture? If you Google it, you'll find that culture is the shared beliefs and attitudes and basically that leads to how we interact and a workplace is experienced. I boiled that down really simply. It's beliefs that influence behaviors that lead to results. So it's how do we define and influence beliefs. So that's what I have to do first, is we have to get the core right. I have to make sure that we're talking the same language, that we believe what we believe, and we define that. So now we have those established beliefs, behaviors that will produce results. So that's kind of the brief overview as far as the definition. What is it? Why does it matter? It leads to your results, ROI implications of it, happiness of your workforce. Just a quick stat for you. The average cost, and some people say this is low, of hiring the wrong person is $15,000 per wrong hire per year. Average cost of losing the right person is $30,000 per year per employee. So if you do that, though, just say you do one of those two things or both of those things wrong every year, it's $45,000 a year, and you multiply that out by organizations that are really large, we have a huge issue on our hands. That cost is, you know, training new people, filling gaps, customer satisfaction because of somebody's not there in that gap anymore who used to handle their account. So all those types of things. And then lastly, how it's created. So that's where we get into those 7 different pillars or building blocks: the vision, the mission, the purpose, the core values, your brand, your team, authenticity as well. So it's all those things do something to help create that culture. So if we're talking vision is going to be an inspirational statement defining what we plan to achieve in the future. So what that does is we set that big vision out there, maybe 5 years out, so that everyone knows this is why we're coming to work. This is what we're working towards. A mission statement talks about who you are, why you do what you do, and how you do it. So that is something that influences daily operations. Your core values talk about what you believe, how you expect to interact with other people, and how you expect people to behave. It tells people what your non-negotiables are. And I say all the time that core values have to be decided, defined, and demonstrated. So what are they? How do you define that? If we say one of our core values is integrity, we need to make sure that we define that. We would think that everyone has the same definition, but maybe their definition of integrity is you can cut corners when it helps us. No. To tell and live the truth, even if it hurts. Now we have a clear definition and expectation of how I expect that to be lived out in my organization. So decide, define, and then lastly, we have to actually do something about it. We have to demonstrate it. So all those different words I just mentioned to you are different building blocks that I explain to people, show them how to write a vision statement, how to write a mission statement, how to craft your core values so that they're more than just words on a wall. All of those things play into us creating that organizational culture.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing in the world that we live in today, how many organizations, whether they're governmental, nonprofit, or for-profit, commercial sector, cannot answer those questions. You talk to their leaders and you ask them, so what's the vision of your company?
Yeah.
You go in there and ask them, what are your core values? Like, I'm so amazed at how many people either don't have those at all, any of that stuff you just talked about. And if they do, they don't embody it. It's like not part of their DNA.
Let's check the box. We had to have it, but you don't see it actually infiltrating the organization and actually being lived out.
You'll walk down the hall and you'll see 4 core values with a graphic around it in the hallway, foyer. And you ask somebody what those are, and they walk by it every day, but they can't tell you. And then even if they can tell, it's integrity, it's trust, it's customer service, it's whatever. And you ask them to define, like, well, what does that mean to you and your company? How do you define excellence there? Then they start tripping. It's amazing how many people don't take the time. That's that's just generic stuff. That's just easy stuff. Everybody does. I mean, and they just want to go right into work. They want to go right into projects, right into reacting to customer, requests and complaints or whatever, right? And it's reactive firefighting mode. It's just amazing. So talk to me a little bit about this process. Let's say you go to a company, company X, is a dumpster fire. They're having a lot of problems. They hear about you and all of your, Texas A&M success. And they're like, oh my God, we need to have this guy in here. We need Alex in here to straighten us out. Right. So you go in. Do you do like an assessment up front? How long does it take to work with somebody to kind of turn the ship around and kind of point them in the right direction?
So it varies. I'll have people that I actually have a coffee company that I have worked with for years, even before I went off on my own, so to speak. And so they were kind of my first company and client, and we still work together. Other organizations like, hey, we just want the curriculum. I'm like, all right, it's online. And, they do that and kind of, so there's different levels of done for you, DIY, do it yourself. But essentially it would start with me asking a lot of questions. Because think of it this way. You go to the hospital or to the emergency room, and from our perspective, we think we know what the problem is. My jaw hurts. And you go, give me something for my jaw. It hurts. And what's the doctor going to do? He's going to go, okay, well, or she's going to, hey, can you sit down? They're going to check your blood pressure. You're like, what does this have to do with my jaw? They're going to check this. They're going to check that. And then he's going to ask you questions. He's going to say, how long has your jaw been hurt? Well, it started this amount of time ago. Okay. Do you have any other symptoms, or have you been to the dentist lately? Do you have any cavities? So what they're going to do is they're trying to first diagnose the problem. That's the first thing I have to do, because if everyone knew what their problem was, they may still need me, but they'd be a lot further down the road than most people. Yeah. Most people, especially leaders, because sometimes we become detached from the everyday process. So if you have a CEO who's only at the company, 1 hour a week type thing, he may or may not, he or she may or may not know what the actual problem is.
Nope.
So I don't want to just talk to the head honcho. I want to observe the team, because I'll tell you what, those entry-level employees will tell you what the problem is. Like, I mean, yep. They'll get right to it. They'll tell you what the problem is, and they'll tell you who the problem is. So that's the first step, is I really have to figure out, like, okay, this is hurting you, but it may be coming from somewhere else. Like, there may be something else that caused football. I got back pain. Well, it's not because of my back. It's because my hamstrings are tight, because my hip flexors are tight. So there's something that's causing that pain, and I have to get to the root, what we talked about earlier, that problem. So that's where it starts. Now that can be revealed in a day. That could be revealed in a month. It really just depends on how transparent and how much access I can actually get to who I need to get to. So that's the first thing I would like to do, is to go in with a notepad and observe. Ask questions, be silent for a couple of days, and just figure out what are the dynamics here. Join a team meeting. Who speaks up and who's quiet? Okay, well, the COO talks in every single meeting. The CEO says nothing, but when it comes time to the decision, the CEO gets the final word no matter what. Okay, now I understand that there's some working dynamics here to where staff may not even feel like they're being heard. So you're asking the question, but you really want to just tell us the answer. So all those things are things I really have to really observe.
Yeah.
And then once I know, okay, hey, here's what I think the problem is. And you'll start to see the head nod and we've had some of that. And okay, I've noticed that. Once I feel confident in what the problem is, the framework will stay the same. What is culture? Why does it matter? How it's created? And then we go into how it's created. But until we figure out the working dynamics that have caused dysfunction, it's really hard to go, all right, guys, so this is how you build culture when they have distrust in the organization. We need to talk about why we don't trust each other. Every single time this person speaks up, y'all don't really seem to have much value in what that person says. Why is that? Well, because of this happened, and we really just don't trust them anymore. Okay, well, should they still be employed here, or is it that high of a distrust where you can't trust them with the building keys, or what are we talking about? So I really have to get deep into some personal issues sometimes, because it's so much more than just service level. It could be something as simple as our employees don't show up on time. What's the problem? They don't show up on time. Maybe. That's a symptom of the problem. If you have engaged, passionate, productive, energetic people, I don't think we have a conversation much more about showing up at 8 a.m. That's a byproduct of having essentially a dysfunctional culture, or maybe some of the wrong people, or maybe unclear expectations. So it's a lot of diagnosing, and I get to play doctor.
Lack of accountability for sure. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty powerful. And, I think you're kind of hitting on an important factor here. A lot of people I've noticed out there in the working world, like to gloss over things. They like to make things sound better than what they really are. It's like walking down the hallway and you pass somebody, hey, how are you today? I'm good.
Yep, good.
But
Yep.
they look at you like they're about dead, like they're sad, their head's hanging down. They're not walking like they are excited or motivated, right? But oh, I'm good. And you're like, hold on, you don't look good. Like words aren't matching, the body language here. So, people will want to say a lot of things, want to portray things a certain way. I go into companies all the time and, oh yeah, we're growing and we're doing this and we're doing that. And I'm, they act like they're talking to somebody that doesn't know what they're doing or something. Right? I'm like, you do realize
you caught me.
I am a professional. You cannot BS me. Like, I see the people's faces as you're talking. I know things are not good, right?
And I think sometimes there's a misconception there. You can be growing financially and dying as a company at the same time.
Yeah.
Like most of the success stories we can think about that became disasters, there was a point to where they were still growing and still making money financially, and things were going south.
Yep.
So it's actually being able to identify, yes, the numbers are there, but this person's probably going to walk out the door in a week. You're about to lose this person. You're about to lose this CEO or this manager, but they're just like, well, the numbers, I hit my metrics. Corporate's happy. Yep. I'm like, no, your ship's about to sink. Course correct.
I'll tell you, for the audience out there, I think a big takeaway here from me in talking with you today, Alex, is, let's get real. Have a really honest conversation with your team, with your company, and really truly understand from an outside perspective how you really are operating as an organization, right? What are the real issues? Are you willing and ready to get to the root level issues? Because a lot of times the leaders are part of the problem. They are the problem. The top 3 reasons why people leave an organization is a bad boss, bad culture, or they're not being challenged in giving meaningful work, and or they aren't being appreciated and recognized for the work they do. And so they're like, I'm out. And those are the top 3 reasons. So if you're struggling, if you're going home at night and worrying and things aren't going as well as they should be, and you're feeling angst and you have some fear and you have some anxiety and your company can do better, I highly encourage you to connect with Alex. He's going to talk to us a little bit about how to get in touch with him here in a minute. He can really make a difference for you. Having an outside professional come in can be a huge transformation for you and your company. And so, Alex, as we kind of wrap up today, it's been such an awesome, we want to have you back on the show again. We had such an awesome conversation.
We got to get into the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, we feel like we just kind of scratching the surface here. So we'll re-engage, have you back another time. But for the audience folks listening, Alex, what are the top 3 most important things that you would share with people that you would want them to have as a takeaway from today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go overarching big what we talked about, but culture matters. Culture matters would be number 1. Number 2, I would say to develop yourself in order to be able to develop other people.
Nice.
And I kind of talk about the leadership replication model. I do it and bring someone else, have them do it while I give oversight, have them do it and teach someone else. So make sure that you are continuing to learn and develop as a leader. And then number 3, I would say that empathy is huge, especially now and moving forward, to really, I think that makes us a better leader. When you understand where someone else is coming from, you can serve them so much better. So culture matters, continue to develop, and empathy will help you.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much. I mean, you just, those Christian family, and we didn't even get into some of that stuff today, the whole Christian values. You're a very well-rounded young man, so mature, so solid, such a great leader. in just business, sports, everything that you're doing is because you're principally based, you're principally grounded in those values that really matter the most. And you've learned that, at a younger age, from your parents, from your sports engagements, and all the way carrying through your business and career and into your family. And I think that's just amazing. And it's a testament of how a good example of how we all need to be thinking about living our lives and running our businesses in a very holistic manner. It's not about just dollars and cents every day, all the time. And so, Alex, man, such a great conversation, great information. I know people are going to want to learn more, want to reach out and connect with you in different ways and kind of see what your programs are. How do people find you, contact you, and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Alex Sezer, Sezer, alexsezer.com. That'll take you to my website. You'll see kind of all of the services I offer, a little bit about me, and then also on the bottom, you'll find the links to the Instagram and LinkedIn accounts, but it's all under Alex Sezer, Sezer, or Alex Sezer Jr. because, my dad and I share the same name. So I told him I've ruined everything for him. I've taken the logo, everything he's done for us. So.
Well, it sounds like you're doing some great things, and whatever, you're doing is certainly probably, from a lot of the things that he's instilled in you. So
I always say there's no me without a God who saves and a village that raised. So I've come from an amazing family, have amazing parents, and that's a big part of why I get to sit in this seat today. So this is not just Alex, it's a bunch of other people that helped me get here. So.
Outstanding. Such a pleasure to be with you today. Folks, that's all. Please join us next week. We're going to have a fitness expert on talking about kind of this broader aspect of some things we talked about today, the whole person concept, and how to be fit and how to stay mentally and physically in shape so you can be a better leader, a better organization, and better serve people out there in the world. So that's it for today. We'll see you next week.